Last week I wasn't here. Pastor Brad Hickson brought a good word. Yeah? Pastor Brad brought a good word. I listened to it online. I watched it. It was good. I did see online that he encouraged you to send me an encouraging text. I'm still waiting. No, I'm kidding. Some of you did. A lot of you did. But I was glad to have him here and fill in. We were in Montana. I ran in a half marathon. It was crazy. Half marathon is 13.1 miles, and I'm running. And at about the 11.5 mile mark, my legs cramped. Cramped. I am running, and they were like, "We're done. We're done." And so it was like, oh. I feel like I have a stick up my personality here. They're done. And I text Tracy. I say, I'm cramping up. And my son Parker gave advice. His advice was, keep running. Yeah, I can't even walk. Parker says, keep running. If I could have, I'd have texted back, jerk, but I couldn't. At mile 12, I'm like, I'm done. I can't finish. I can't. I was going to call Tracy, say, come get me. I can't. I know I got 1 mile to go. I can't finish. And I'm looking ahead. There was a little girl. The whole race is lined with people cheering on. And looking ahead, there was a little girl right at the 12-mile mark. Just a little girl. She used to stand there with a hand out, giving people 5. And I thought, I've got to make it to the little girl. This won't scare her. Gave her 5, pushed through, got to the end of the race, or near the end of the race, and the race ends. You have to cross a bridge over the Clark Fork River. It's a beautiful scenery, and you end up in downtown Missoula. And I'm like, I'm going to run across this bridge. And so I gave everything I had. I ran across the bridge, and of course, at the finish line, they have cameras that are doing the photo finish, and then they send you your pictures, and those pictures will be deleted immediately. Like, I am begging as I cross that line. I have tears. I'm like, ah! And when you cross the line, they hand you a medal. It was like, just give me that. Whew. But we're back. In Montana, it stays late. Like, it was light to like 10:30, 10:45 in the evening. And we're up there sitting out in cool temperatures, drinking coffee in the light. It was crazy. Well, we're on a series called Punctuation. This is part 4. Pastor Brad did a great job last week of talking about the comma. Week before, so far up to now, we've talked about the period, and we talked about the question mark. And today I want to talk about a piece of punctuation that really is called the ellipsis. The name of this punctuation is the ellipsis. You may not know it as the ellipsis. You probably know it as ... Before I go any further, I lost track for a moment. Let me come back around, because if you're with me very long, this is every week. Over here to my left is Tracy Sinkbill. Will you raise your hand, Tracy? This is Tracy. Tracy is one of our heroes, unsung heroes. She is on the school board for Dysart Unified Public Schools. And she wants to go back on that board. She doesn't get enough punishment, so she's going to do it again. But she has brought a petition for us to sign for her to be able to continue to be on that school board. So this is not a political, this is a supporting Tracy. Okay? So if she comes up and asks you to sign a check, it's from me. If she comes up and asks you to sign her petition, it's to help her succeed in influencing our school district. Very important. Amen? Amen. So we're talking about the ellipsis today. The ellipsis is ... The ellipsis is basically defined as the finishing of a thought without saying the thought. An ellipsis is the completion of a sentence without adding any more words. The dot, dot, dot. We use it in terms of, oh, I know who they are, dot, dot, dot. Or remember the last time, dot, dot, dot. Now, we in our modern age, we have a different dot, dot, dot. We have LOL. And we use LOL to try to soften our dot, dot, dot. So it'll be like, I cannot believe you acted like that, LOL. Like, but, what? Laugh out loud? No, I'm not going to laugh out loud. Don't tell me what to do. By the way, I don't LOL. I actually write the words out. That made me laugh out loud. Old school. We replace it even with, there's emojis today. We use emojis to replace the ellipsis. I don't do emojis. Well, that's not completely true. I do now and then send the poop emoji. Not for any particular reason. I just wake up in the night, think of somebody, and send it to them. That's not true. But the ellipsis in our lives as Christ followers, oftentimes the dot, 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 the ellipsis, the LOL, is communicated far more clearly by our actions, attitudes, or motives than it is through our words. Like the beginning of our statement may have words, but the way that we live, act, treat, our motives really are the ellipsis that people hear. Matthew 14, if you have your Bibles or your electronic device to turn to Matthew 14, we're gonna read a story that's familiar to you that we're going to kind of walk through. Matthew 14, verse 22, Jesus is talking, and this is just after he's fed approximately 5,000 men, possibly 5,000 families, potentially 15,000 people. The Bible records 5,000 men. We know there were women and children present as well. So up to 15,000 people have just been miraculously fed. And Jesus, we're picking up the storyline after this amazing miracle. I mean, think about that. Think about this incredible miracle. A few fish, a couple of loaves of bread, and Jesus feeds 15,000 people. And then in verse 22 of chapter 14 in the book of Matthew, it says, immediately Jesus, he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, about 3 a.m., he came to them, good grief. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, it's a ghost. And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. Evidently, when I read this, I think Shakespeare's involved. I don't know. I don't know that he said it like that. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Jesus said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began sinking. He cried out, Lord, save me. Lord, save me. Verse 31, Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got in the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshiped him. And those in the boat worshiped him. And those in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Let's pray again. Jesus, I thank you right now for who you are and for what you want to communicate to each of us today. And I pray that we leave here today not having gathered for a couple hours, not having met old friends and new. I pray that today we allow what comes in our life to affect our tomorrow, our Tuesday, our Wednesday, our Thursday. That we don't just have a Sunday emotion, but we have a life change opportunity in your presence. Let us leave here today, Lord, living, loving, and looking more like you so other people will do the same. And all of City Church said, amen. You're not really excited about that. I can keep praying if you want. Have you ever done anything in private that you're not real proud of? Yeah, if you're not nodding, you're lying right now. Bigger yet, have you ever done anything in public that so disregarded others, but looking back on it, you were embarrassed or ashamed as well? Yeah, this is where you stop nodding. Inside your head, you're going, ooh, and your spouse is going. There was a day that I was a part of a city volleyball team. Co-rec. I'm was quite the athlete in the co-rec volleyball days. And we won the city championship on this night. Yeah, city champions. No big deal. Just co-rec city champions. And so I came out of winning this co-rec city championship, and I got in my truck. And I had a big truck, big truck at the time. And I got in the truck, and I'm like, I got it going on because I've just been a part of winning the city co-rec volleyball championship. It's a big deal. And so I get in my truck, and I pull out on the street, and in front of the street, in front of me is a gentleman on a motorcycle with his wife on the motorcycle behind him and their daughter on a bicycle next to them in the middle of the street. Tracy's looking at me like, you're telling this story? Not my finest hour. And so I am behind them in the street. And the gentleman on the motorcycle turns around and yells, "Get off of my mule." And I said, "Get your mule out of the middle of the road." And he said, "I'm going to kick your mule." And I said, "You can't catch my mule." You get the picture. So I zip around him in my big old truck and start racing through town while he drops wife and daughter and begins to chase me on his motorcycle. And we are going through the streets of Missoula, Montana at over 80 miles an hour. He pulls up next to me and begins to kick my door. I'm thinking he wants to go see Jesus. So I have a great idea. I'll push him into oncoming traffic, and if that doesn't help, I'll get him up on the sidewalk and pin him into the guardrail. So I begin to move towards him and begin to push him across the traffic, and I look out my windshield, and coming across the bridge, all 4 lanes of traffic are police officers. And I looked in my rearview mirror and had the same view behind us. So I thought, 8 police officers, might as well stop. So I pulled over and got out of my truck, and they were happy to show me their guns that day. Sadly, one of the officers pulling me over was my father-in-law at the time. Dwayne, bro. He wasn't happy. He left. So the officer comes over to me and says, "What is going on?" And I begin telling him my justifiable story. That guy was in the middle of the road. And I started chasing that guy. And the officer's taking the report, and he says, "What is your license plate number?" True story. I said, my license plate says lunatic. And he looks at his partner and he goes, "Go check his plate." So his partner walks behind my big truck, looks at my plate, comes back, looks at the officer and goes, "Lunatic." At that moment, they gave me a new set of handcuffs that fit my wrists just right. And I got to go downtown and sit in a little room by myself. Nice room, all the things I needed, a toilet and a bed. And I began to sing. I sang, it was late at night, and I had my phone call, and that sucked. Hey, babe, what's happening? Oh, just hanging out at the jail. Yeah, I need $350 cash. Bye. So I'm in my little box, and so I began to sing. I sang every song I could possibly think of as loud as I could. I sang, and I sang, and I sang. I sang Christmas songs. I sang every song I could sing. And then when I got done singing my song, I ran out of songs to sing, so I started whistling. I just started whistling every song I could possibly whistle. And finally, the door to my little new commode opens, and the guy goes, "We called around and found someone to get you." And so I went out and went home to a wife who's crying because we have a child, and she's sure that her husband is now going to be a convict. That night, the truth of the matter is, my ... my ellipsis, my LOL, my value gave no regard for the other people on the streets driving at those speeds. My ... my ellipsis, my LOL, gave no regard to my wife or my child, our son at the time. That ... to you today might seem extreme, but I think the truth of the matter is, in our Christ-like walks, we do possibly the same extremity in a spiritual way. The point of all life is to yield our daily everything to God. That's the point of life. Is to yield everything to God. To get up in the morning and be able to say, "Lord, I yield to you my worries. I yield to you the unforgiveness I carry. I yield to you my rights. I yield to you my schedule. Interrupt my day, Lord. I yield to you the food that I eat." This sounds odd, but quite frankly, this is what those 12 teenage boys did for 3.5 years. They got up every day and said, "What's today? We just want to do what you want us to do today." Like yesterday was cool. Like there was this dude that was crippled. You healed him. And then right after that, there's that woman that was bleeding for 12 years. Whoa, that was crazy. She just touched the hem of your robe. And at the same time, you were going to this dude's house who had a little girl that died, and you raised the sister up without even going to her house. Like, what a day. What's up today, Jesus? We just yield to you. That's the point of life, is that we would yield to him. But sometimes following Jesus is like that storm. Sometimes following Jesus isn't all we thought it was cracked up to be. Sometimes following Jesus is difficult and work, and it's laborious, and wonder if it's worth it. And it's painful, and can't they just catch a break? And sometimes walking with Jesus is, well, all systems go. We're just clicking along. Everything's good. Blessings are coming my way. I'm hitting my stride. I'm feeling good. The oddity of the economy of God is that the person right next to you can be in a polar opposite season than you. You can be walking in the season where everything is just clicking, 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 and the person next to you is like, "I just want one click. Just give me just one." Like, I'd be happy for the sound of a click. The danger is that whether we're living in that season of where we can't seem to catch a break, or we're living in the season where we be in our stride, the danger is what can happen to us in that. And what can happen to us in that is that we can decide that Jesus is more of a benefit than he is beautiful. We begin to make him more useful than he is beautiful. We read this story of Peter, and we applaud Peter, boat. Like, dude, you walked on water. That is like, that's Instagram worthy right there. Like, we got a picture of Pete on the water, LOL. truth of the matter is, in the storm, in the battle, Pete deserted the other 11. He didn't say, Jesus, call us all. He didn't say, Jesus, get in the boat with us. He didn't say, Jesus, we need some help. No, it became about Pete. Like, Jesus, get me out of this. What about them? Forget them. I have the right to be offended. You don't know what I've been going through, Jesus. Are you kidding me? I've been fighting this fight for 25 years. No, forget that. Call me. Let my ellipsis, ... LOL, show my real motive. Peter left the other 11. We make Peter the hero, and it's pretty cool that he walked on water, and that's a miracle. But I wonder how many times we have just received a blessing from the Lord and then turned and had a different LOL. How many times have there been a miracle in our life and the next thing that comes from our mouth is offensive? It's an interesting storyline because it says that Peter got out of the boat, and it says that we read today, he came to Jesus, and as he got to Jesus, he saw the wind and began sinking. And as he began sinking, he cried out, Lord, save me. At that moment, Jesus went from useful to beautiful. Here's the irony of that. It says that Jesus reached out and pulled him in. That means that he was one arm's length away. He was this close. At any moment, Jesus could have grabbed him. At any moment, Jesus could have stopped him from sinking. At any moment, but you know what Jesus waited for? In your storm, am I simply useful, or do you find me beautiful? Oh, we might be close in proximity, but what's your motive? What's your ... What's your ellipsis saying that your words don't say? And then they have this conversation. Interesting thing that happens in this conversation. This Jeremiah, for the moment, is Jesus. Jesus doesn't wear a ponytail, by the way. Jeremiah, Peter, they're still in the storm. Check it out, in the story. They're still out in the storm. If I'm Peter, this is Jesus, I'm like, we're hanging out. And Jesus says, dude, like, why did you doubt? I'm like, can we talk about this in the boat? Can we say we get in the boat and talk about this? There, Jesus. Jesus is like, bro, like we were right here. You looked at the wind. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Can we get in the boat? Would that be cool? Can we get in the boat just one time? There, Jesus. Yeah. Jesus says, why did you doubt? In fact, Jesus was saying was, why was your storm more attractive than my beauty? Why was your right more attractive than my beauty? Let me sit down. Give him a hand. He was just molested, so. They're still in the water. And Jesus says, dude, why did you doubt? Why did you allow the wind? Why did you allow your offense? Why did you allow your stress? Why did you allow your weakness to become more valuable than my beauty? What is it that you're fixing your eyes on? ... Mark chapter 6, the book of Mark also records this storyline, and we're going to read through it. Mark 6:45. I want to remind you that the book of Mark was written by John Mark. John Mark was not one of the 12. John Mark was not a disciple. John Mark was a scribe, we might call him, and he wrote the book based on Peter's narration. So the book of Mark is Peter's story, a disciple, written by John Mark, who, as Peter narrated the story, John Mark wrote down what Peter told him. And so we pick up in Mark 6:45. It says, immediately, he, Jesus, made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida. Well, he dismissed the crowd. And after he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land, and he saw that they were making headway painfully. For the wind was against them, and about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. He meant to pass them by. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded. So let's go to perhaps the night that Peter is telling the story and John Mark is writing it down, and perhaps they're sitting around a campfire, and Peter is describing what had gone on, and it was like, man, it was a crazy life, Mark. It was crazy living with Jesus, and Mark would say, well, tell me about that one day. And Peter's like, it blew my mind. Like, we'd been with this group of people for like 3 days. I don't know, there was 12, 15,000 people. I know there were at least 5,000 men. And crazy. We'd been with like 3 days. They hadn't eaten anything. And Philip went to Jesus, and Philip just said, like, Jesus, we need to feed these folk. And Jesus said, well, why don't you feed them? We were like, well, because we don't know where McDonald's is. What do you mean, why don't we feed them? And Jesus said, no, what do you got? And we said, well, like, Jesus, like, we got a few fish and a few loaves of bread. Like, look at all these fish. They haven't eaten in 3 days, like 15,000 people out here. Jesus said, yeah, well, here, I'm going to pray over it, and y'all are going to start feeding them. And Mark, it was crazy. Like, every time we took a loaf out of our basket, there was another one. And we handed out a fish, and there was another one. And, like, we fed everybody there, and they not only ate, but they were filled. And then there was all these baskets left over. Mark, it was crazy. It was a crazy thing to live through, to watch happen. This little bit of food feed all these people who hadn't eaten for 3 days. Frankly, it blew my mind, Mark. It was crazy. Wow. Mark would say, well, what happened at the end of the day? He goes, oh, Mark. Well, Jesus, like, he said he wanted to hang out with his dad for a while. He wanted to go talk to his dad. And he did that kind of often. So it was no big deal that he said, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my dad. I'll dismiss the crowds. You guys go to the other side. And Mark, you might want to say Bethsaida so people know, but it was really Gennesaret, and Matthew will write that down for us. But the last time we were there at that place, there was this demon dude, and like, he was full of demons. And Jesus, it was crazy the last time we were there. So Jesus pulled like all these demons out and put them in these pigs, and these pigs went in the water. And the dude was in his right mind. It was the craziest thing we've ever seen. So Jesus told, get in the boat and go back there. And so, like, we got in the boat, and we're headed back there. And Mark, I got to tell you, bro, like I'm a professional fisherman, and the weather kicked up. I'd never seen a storm like this. This storm, it was crazy. It was just bashing the boat and throwing us all over. It was painful to make any progress. It was insanity. I've never seen anything like this. The waves, and it was just throwing us around. And to be real honest with you, there's a couple disciples that were crying. Like John, the beloved one. Guy's a wimp. Don't write that down. He was crying. And we're going along, and then we saw Jesus, and Jesus, well, he was going to pass us by. Which this isn't just a statement of, well, Jesus was going to ignore them and walk on by. This was a reference back to the Torah that every Hebrew boy would know. This is a reference back to the Torah where Moses was hidden in the cleft of a rock, and it said that God, glory, passed him by. And at that moment, Moses saw past, present, and future, recognized the beauty of his God. And Pete says, dude, he was about to show off his beauty. And I went and opened my pie hole. And then we were at the other side. And Mark is like, no, wait. What about the part where you walked on the water? What like Matthew gave you 4 full verses about what about that? That's as though Peter said, yeah, that's not so important anymore. Really, this isn't about me. This is about him. Yeah, I don't think we need to record that I only thought he was useful. I want to keep him beautiful. Yeah, let's not write that part down. But Pete, this is your chance. Yeah, no, my chance was when I asked him to save me, and I recognized past, present, and future. And he asked me why I doubted. He asked me why I let something else take my view, take my love. He asked me why I allowed my offenses, my strengths, my anxieties, my blessings, my fears. Why did I let them be more attractive than him? Yeah, Mark, I think we need to leave that part out. Book of John says in his narrative that as soon as Jesus got in the boat, it says immediately they were at the other side. Cliff, if you come up. I don't know where it happened, but I'm convinced it did happen. That at the end of the storm, whether it was conclusive of what Matthew said when he got in the boat and the storm quit, or if it was conclusive of what John says, that when he got in the boat, they were at the other side. I don't know which of those two and how the narrative fits, but I do know well enough that at some point, whether in the boat or on the other side, when the storm quit, there was a hush. There was a silence. And Matthew tells us those that were in the boat worshiped him. I believe in that moment of silence, whether in the boat or on the other side, in that pause, in that recognition of transitioning from him being useful to him being beautiful, somewhere, one of those 12 boys let it go. He loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, he loves us so. He loves us. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Something happened. Something took Jesus from the ... meaning he's useful to the ... meaning he's beautiful. 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 And Pete said, yeah, don't even tell my story. I lay it down. I I just want people to see Jesus. Dot, dot, dot. Stand before you as your pastor, and I tell you, there's been times in my life where I've made Jesus more useful than beautiful. There's times in my life I stood before him and demanded my rights. Let him know how I should be able to act and how people have mistreated me, or a certain way I thought he should move in an instance. And I hope that doesn't concern you that your pastors have those struggles, but I will promise you this. In the end, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. He's beautiful. He's so beautiful. I ask you to stand. We're going to sing for a little bit. Would you take a moment, and perhaps this morning you need to come before the throne. He says we can do it with confidence. And just come clean. Maybe he's simply been useful to you, and today he becomes beautiful. Mo, would you turn the lights off for us? Let's take a moment and redefine our ellipsis today.